All right, yeah, my name is Scott Tomilson. I'm the technical product manager here at Ping. I'm responsible for the Ping Federated product, but I have seen Ping Access since its inception, really, and taken that into a version 4 product now. Mark Mosley in the front here is now the technical product manager for that, but we kind of tag team on a lot of things here at Ping. So the session I'm going to talk about today is to modernize your access control infrastructure, and I'm really going to talk a lot about how you can, what benefits there are from deploying Ping Federate and Ping Access, and how you can get there from an existing WAM solution. So here's the agenda I've got. We've got about 20 minutes to get through this. First, going to give you an overview of access control requirements. First, setting the context around the more traditional access control requirements you might have seen from web access management products that were developed almost 20 years ago now. And then comparing those, contrasting it to modern access control requirements that you have today, dealing with the security trends and needs you have today. And then how would you take your existing solutions that were really designed with the traditional requirements in mind and applying those to modern requirements and the challenges you run into with that. And then giving an overview of our federated access management solution and some strategies for getting there from your existing WAM solution. So to talk about requirements first. Web access management started around 1998, 1999. Big players like Integrity, Oblix, nCommerce. Who else was in there? ClearTrust, RSA. So lots of different WAM solutions that were developed back then had these requirements in mind, where you really focused on local user authentication. So it might be in an enterprise where you're logging in users that are just going about doing their day-to-day job, logging into maybe an internal portal, accessing a bunch of employee applications. They could be customer-facing as well, but you own the database where those users are logging into, and you manage those accounts. And that whole infrastructure is really about authenticating those users and providing a single sign-on experience into a set of applications. These are applications that you would host locally and put behind this web access management infrastructure. Like Patrick talked about this morning, session management it was a big focus of these products. So you had things like timeout policies. Once you log in to the system, there's a timeout around idle control and maximum session. There's, of course, logout and revocation use cases where the end user could log out themselves or an administrator could revoke their session. So that was very important for these products. And then you had another aspect where you can define authorization policies around URLs and say, okay, these applications under this URL structure, we're going to require these roles, or it has to be this time of day, and apply that sort of essentially on these apps that you're enabling SSO for. Now, a lot of these requirements have not gone away. We've really just enhanced the needs today on top of that foundation. So now you see from modern access control requirements, you have cloud, obviously a big focus. So it might be that you're connecting to SaaS apps and you want to enable SSO to those SaaS apps. It might be that your organization has large investment in infrastructure as a service. Maybe you're using Amazon Web Services or Azure to deploy applications on there. So that's important that you're able to support applications there and move as much as your infrastructure to IaaS. You also want to support the apps of today. So the apps in 1998, 1999, they look pretty arcane compared to the apps today, right? They're maybe like CGI-based, very transactional-based. You do something in the web app, you get a response. We didn't have mobile use cases back then. We didn't have rich client web apps back then that used Ajax and a lot of JavaScript and a lot of logic in the clients themselves. And so very different when you compare that to old legacy applications. And the users that they have nowadays, it's not just your internal users, it's not just your customers. It could be external user authentication, taking maybe social login or partner federated SSO login from your business partners. So you're not managing the identities, you're really trusting an external source for those identities. So how do you apply that WAM solution from 1998, 1999 for these needs? So this is probably what your architecture might have looked like back then. You worked hard to make this diagram in Visio. You're really proud of this. You still maintain it today. your life is miserable. But you have agents deployed all over the place. You have agents deployed in several data centers. You maybe have policy servers located in these data centers to support local requests coming from those agents. You have configuration databases, policy stores, session management databases, kind of all over the place and synced somehow across the data centers. So pretty complex, heavyweight infrastructure. And when you try to embrace the cloud with that, there's a couple strategies you might look at doing. Option number one would be move that entire infrastructure up to the cloud. And that's pretty challenging because that WAM system maybe is several gigabytes in size to get installed, and you have to install an app server and supporting services on there and different modules, and like getting all that installed in Amazon is quite a feat. And then how would you support like a mixture of IaaS and on-premise? Well, you might look at deploying, say, an agent inside of Amazon from an app there, and somehow calling back to a policy server on-premise, but you're going to run into performance issues there, latency across that network call. The caching is just not going to be good enough to keep up with that, and so that makes it really hard for you to embrace cloud technology. Now, mobile, the modern apps we're looking at today, mobile was not really a focus at all for these solutions. And the answer you'll get from vendors that developed these WAM products in 1999, 1998 is that, well, you need an API gateway because mobile is really an API use case. And you have these API gateways that came really from a SOAP world and protecting web services. And now they've added on new features to support REST API security and OAuth. That is really a completely different solution that you're supposed to integrate somehow with your WAM system, somehow benefit from the same login and tokens, and somehow clobber them together. But it ends up being a very separate infrastructure, and you don't have a single point of control. You don't have a single place where you're configuring how users get in, how you do identity mapping, and all this. And so it ends up being quite a challenging thing to get that all working together. And the modern web apps we have today, again, quite different from the ones in 1999, 98. You didn't have these kind of technologies like OAuth and AJAX and WebSockets. And we use very different application stacks to develop web apps now. Very JavaScript heavy. We use frameworks like React. We use responsive design, so it looks great on mobile. If your web product is not using these, chances are, as a hint to you, that they're not going to support applications that are written around these technologies very well either. And so you'll run into application compatibility issues, things like URI fragments, where a lot of modern web apps are preserving state in URI fragments. In a session timeout or a bookmark URL situation, you could end up losing that URI fragment, and then maybe the state of the app is lost for the user across a session timeout or a fresh new session scenario. So not ideal. And customer and partner access use cases, well, again, these WAM products were focused around local user authentication. But they've added features for federated login. I'd say around 2003, 2004, all these WAM products came out with a separate module that was supporting SAML. And you'd install that module and you'd hook it into your WAM infrastructure. How you managed your SAML connections was very different than how you'd protect a web app. And it really felt like a bolt-on, even today. If you look at these federation models, I think they've improved a lot over time, but it still feels like quite different in how you set that all up, how you hook in authentication, how you manage policies for getting in these apps. And so ends up feeling like a really complex infrastructure to maintain. So along comes Ping and the identity-defined security platform. We have two sets of our platform. So there's the Federated Access Management Solution and Federated Identity Management. What I'm going to be focusing on is the top half, Federated Access Management. You have multi-factor authentication, which is our Ping ID solution. So it offers a range of MFA options there. The marquee one is a mobile app that you install, and you do a swipe, push notification, or swipe-based authentication out of band to get into your apps. We have single sign-on, which is our Ping Federate and Ping One solutions, providing a lot of SAML and federated SSO and login capabilities. And then we have our access security portion of Federated Access Management, which is our Ping Access product, providing authorization, access control rules into your applications with web and API security around that. So why would you look at our Federated Access Management solution? Well, it gives you one solution to address those needs that we talked about. So you have web and mobile and API security built into one product. You have 100% standards and based and open architecture for it. So we have different components that you would deploy to meet your use case needs. So there's like Ping Federate, for example, and Ping Access. You use those together to provide your login services and provide your authorization controls. But the interactions between the two components, there's nothing proprietary about it. So we use standards wherever possible. So the login mechanism is OpenID Connect based. We use OAuth to protect REST APIs. But there are certain use cases where we saw a need for it, where there wasn't a clear standard for how we map that to. Like, for example, we have agents that you can deploy with Ping Access on your web servers. How that talks to our policy server, we came up with our own agent protocol for that. It's a completely open protocol that we share with customers and partners. If you have a need to develop an agent that we don't have, that's available to you. And so there's nothing secret proprietary about what we do there. You really get full insight into how everything works. And hopefully that gives you more freedom and flexibility in how you grow this infrastructure. It's very lightweight and easy to deploy. So Ping Federate, Ping Access, they set up in minutes. I'm going to do a masterclass tomorrow afternoon. If you haven't experienced firsthand the setup and administrative experience of our products, you'll see that tomorrow and get a feel for just how easy and quick it is to deploy them. Because they're so lightweight, it really is designed for distributed cloud environments. So you can deploy components of this, like maybe you deploy Ping Access inside of Amazon, maybe you deploy an agent there. You can mix and match, where you need to deploy the infrastructure to meet your deployment needs. Also, highly scalable. So we have learned a lot in 20 years about how to do session management. We took scalability and security really at the forefront of our design for how we address the same session management needs that we have. So how we do session timeouts and logout and session revocation, we made sure that that's going to scale to meet the needs of multi-million user deployments. We have gateway and agent-based deployment architecture options, which I'll get into. And we say also it's federated by default. So since our federated access management solution is really built around our Ping Federate product, I think everybody in here recognizes that Ping Federate's one of the industry-leading federation servers with a lot of flexibility in how you can connect to partners. And so you really have that as a core authentication authority to get into the solution and authenticate your end users no matter where they're coming from. So how do we get you there? So we have those two deployment options, like I mentioned. So as you might expect, WAM solutions, even from 20 years ago, they had either a gateway mindset or an agent-based mindset. You're going to deploy as a proxy, or you're going to deploy a bunch of plugins to your web servers to protect access. So we started with a gateway and Ping Access, but we realized that we were going to get pushed to do agents at some point because it's, a gateway might work well for some environments. So if you have the ability to have the network routing set up for a gateway, that's a great way to get a lower total cost of ownership, where you have that central chokehold on how your requests are going through to apps. So you get full insight into all the URLs that people are going to, all the apps and policies that they're going to. So it gives you also an easy way to onboard applications where you just change your DNS and your network routing to get that app behind this infrastructure. But if you have a very distributed environment where that's a challenge, we have agents to help you out with that. It gives you a simple replacement option as well. If you have a very complex SiteMinder environment with lots of agents deployed and changing your network infrastructure is going to be tricky, well, we can do a one-for-one replacement of those agents with ours. So no network changing required. We deploy our agents. We took a very focused approach with our agents to make sure they were extremely lightweight, so not a lot of complex logic in there, and very performant with caching built into our protocol. So you'd hopefully deploy these agents just once, and then for new features, new functionality, you just upgrade the central policy server, and you can benefit from that in your agents without having to touch anything there. So once you choose your strategy, a gateway or agent-based deployment, you then need to think about how are we going to roll this out. So we're going to be in a state where we have the third-party WAM product deployed, and we need to deploy this Ping infrastructure. This experience needs to be seamless for our end users. So they still need to log in and get to their apps. We want to have some apps still under the old infrastructure, but some of our new apps maybe that we're onboarding or some we've targeted for migration, we're going to move those behind Ping. The end user shouldn't be aware that one's behind a certain infrastructure and the other's behind the other one. it should be they log in and then they can access whatever application they need to. So we need to somehow integrate these two sessions that you're going to have for a period of time. So there's a couple of approaches we have for that. There's one we've called third-party WAM sign-on, and another one we've called Toca mediation. So with third-party WAM login, you have the ping infrastructure sitting in front of your one of your apps that you've migrated, maybe one of your new apps. You have a request that comes into that app, and somebody needs to get logged in. We'll redirect you to your third-party WAM product, which I've vendor agnostically labeled WAMI 2000 here. And you log into that access portal. You get a session for that third-party WAM system, and then we'll trust that third-party WAM token and give you a token for our session management. And now, so we keep those two sessions in sync. We can do a keep alive in the background. So we would keep that third-party token alive. So if you're like accessing just web app X here for a long time and you go back to web app A, we don't want the user to have to log in again. So we'll make sure that those sessions keep up to date. So this is a strategy you might look at initially when you are just piloting the FAM solution, or just doing a first phase. You want to get some of the apps behind here and not do a big bang approach. And so this is a good way to do it without impacting the user experience whatsoever. Then once you've reached a threshold of, say, majority of your apps are now behind the ping infrastructure, you could look at doing what we call Toca mediation. So your sign-on request would now happen at Ping Federate. We can host a login page. We can log you in against, say, Active Directory, or do a Kerberos-based authentication, or some MFA-based authentication, whatever you like. There's lots of flexibility on how the user gets into this. Once they are logged in, we'll give them a session token for accessing stuff behind ping access. But for those odd apps that you still have, maybe you have that third-party WAM agent still installed there, and it's tricky for you to coordinate when you're going to update that agent, when you're going to coordinate a change window with that app owner to get that agent uninstalled and ours installed, or to make DNS changes, whatnot. You're going to coordinate with them and say, well, look, we're going to make this change, and we're just going to change the DNS so it's coming through us. But you don't have to worry about unstalling that agent, so you don't have to touch your infrastructure whatsoever. We will translate our web access session cookie for the target one. So we do a call to Ping Federate. Actually, I don't quite, call to Ping Federate. There's APIs and integration kits we have that will translate our session cookie for a third-party WAM token. And we'll get that, and without the user knowing, without even the browser seeing that third-party WAM token, we'll send that to the back end, get them in the app seamlessly. So those are a couple strategies for synchronizing your sessions and migrating over there. When you're choosing to move to our solution, though, you don't have to do a one-for-one replacement of our authorization capabilities and say, like, I want all the WAM features just behind ping. You could think about, well, do we need all that? Do we need the authorization capabilities? Is that really a focus of what we want for SSO? Or do we just want to get you into the apps? And do we just care about authorization for you at the front door? You can evaluate different application integration strategies that we have. So you could look at using just a federated SSO model for getting you into the apps. And what we call token authorization, where it's just an application entry point decision to say, like, do you have the right roles to get into that app or not? If you really want a one-for-one replacement, we have SSO, session management, URL-based authorization, some great step-up authentication capabilities built into ping access. So when you're on a certain URL that requires it, only at that time say we can enable MFA for that sensitive area of the application. So lots of different capabilities you can apply here, and just slightly different application integration strategies that have varying degrees of effort level and implications with that. But we try to give you as many options as possible, and it's up to you really to see what's appropriate for your environment. So once you've moved all your apps behind our ping access product, then you can think about now finally deprecating that third-party WAM product and moving on with your life. So Ping Federate becomes that sole entry point into getting into the WAM system. All users are logging in there. You have a lot of flexibility in how they're logging in. It could be a local user authentication. It could be a social login. It could be a third-party WAM, third-party partner federated SSO-based login. Ping Access is solely responsible for session and access management features. So you have that nice centralized control there. And now you can really start to focus on new use cases that you couldn't achieve before. So you can apply API security for your mobile apps. And how the users get in, that could be through federated login. So they're using a SAML-based login to get into that mobile app, so you're not having to manage accounts for that partner. You could think about really embracing the cloud and making better use of your infrastructure as a service investment there. So with that, that's our modernizing access control. This is really the end state. It's hopefully a simpler and open standard-based approach for you, so you get all the same access management and features that you've come to expect from a WAM solution with a new modern approach from Ping. You get centralized authentication, access control, and auditing for both web apps and APIs. And you have now the freedom to explore new use cases for both APIs and web apps, both on-premise and in the cloud. So with that, thanks for your time. If you want more information on WAM migration strategies from us, feel free to go to our website and search for WAM migration there, and you'll find some helpful migration guides and webinars that we've done on this topic. So with that, I'd like to open for questions. Yes?
In WebGate, I'm sorry, it's
Yep.
from Kaiser from Menente. Can you draw a comparison between, say, Oracle WebGate and your access agent? What's bad? What's good? What's bad?
What's the difference between an Oracle WebGate agent and a Ping WebGate agent?
Yeah.
I'm not an Oracle expert, so, but I would expect that it's very similar. So with our agents, you install that in the target web server. You define policies around, here's the URLs for the apps, here's the required levels of authentication we need to get into the app. You can apply lots of different rules on there for controlling authorization. We have some that are what we call processing rules as well, so you could do more advanced things around manipulating the request before it hits that back-end application. So I would expect we have very similar feature sets compared to an Oracle WebGate, but I'm not an expert in it to speak completely for that. But from what I've heard from customers, it is a very similar set of features that you can get with us. Yeah. Yes?
Thanks. So earlier you talked a little bit about the API gateways, and one of the things that we see is the web is moving to a lot of API-heavy type transactions to support single-page web applications, mobile apps, Internet of Things. So there's some overlap between WAM security features and API gateway security features. But if a WAM solution is going to be kind of a single dedicated access management system, there's some features that I'm curious to see if the WAM systems like Ping have.
Okay.
Example being enabling mutual SSL for mobile apps dynamically, rate limiting quotas, non-browser-based single sign-on, those types of things.
Okay, great question. Yeah. So for the ones you highlighted there, so mutual TLS-based authentication, we can do that. So how a user gets in and gets a token for the system, we have all the flexibility that Ping Federate provides for that. So you can define policies and say, here's the authentication requirements that are required for this app, or if you need an API token, an OAuth token, Ping Federate can connect it to what we call adapters. And so we can do a certificate-based authentication for that entry point. For rate limiting, we do have out-of-the-box features for that in Ping Access. That is something we've seen from customers, especially for API use cases. Not so much for web apps, but our policy server, it's really agnostic of is it a WAM case or is it an API case. Like you can apply that to either scenario if you want. And the other one you mentioned was...
Yeah, I did throw a lot. Sorry.
Web-based, so non-web-based scenarios, yeah. So we use OAuth for securing APIs, and Ping Federate is the OAuth authorization server. And we support all the grant types that are defined in the OAuth spec. And so if it's a non-web scenario where you want to own the login page, say in a mobile app or a desktop client app, we can do, for example, like a resource owner-based password credential grant type. We can validate the username and password like in a post call that comes, translate that into an OAuth token that then is used to secure the API calls. To issue certificates for clients or for? Sign. We do have some basic cert management capabilities in our products. It's not really the intent to become a full-blown PKI for that, but like if you're just looking to deploy a few certs for part of that infrastructure, it's suited for that. But yeah, if it's more about signing session tokens or something, that's all built into the solution. So,
Okay, let's wrap it up.
Yeah, we're over time now, so thank you very much. If there's any follow-up questions, feel free to grab me today. Thanks.